Hi everybody. If you're looking for a new way to demonstrate your expertise and authority in your niche, then there is something that you can do that your audience is absolutely going to appreciate. They will love the opportunity to interact with you and also to learn something new. So today we're talking about how you can host your own webinar or masterclass. Let's get right into it. If you're new here, my name is Liz and I release videos every Tuesday talking about how you can use video to move your business forward. Make sure that you subscribe to this channel so that you never miss any of my future content. Now, often when I mention webinars or masterclasses, I see people running for the hills because the problem with them is that, of course, you have to show up live. And showing up live on video is something that absolutely terrifies many people. I have seen people doing a pre-recorded webinar, which they just release and then people can sign up and join that. However, I have to admit that a live webinar is one of the best ways to engage and connect with your audience. If getting used to speaking live on camera is something that you need help with, of course I am here to help you with that. However, once you decide that you're actually going to release a webinar or a masterclass, what you will find is that you will really be able to create a greater level of engagement with your existing audience, and you can also get in front of a new audience and demonstrate to them that you are an expert and an authority in your niche. So today we're talking about some of the steps that you would have to take so that you could host your own webinar, or of course you can call that a masterclass. So let's get right into it. Now, the two pieces of tech that you need to have ready for this are an email marketing platform as well as a web hosting platform where you can actually stream your webinar live. So you might ask, what really is the difference between having a webinar or actually just going live on any of your social platforms? So of course, the big difference is that for a webinar, people are actively signing up for that because they want to attend the webinar and they want to hear the content. The reason that this actually makes a difference for your business is that when you just go live stream on YouTube or on Facebook or Instagram, everyone in the world who just happens to be crossing your path can stop and watch and engage with you if they want. This is, of course, a great way to build your audience and to create a deeper connection, and I highly advise that everyone get used to going live on their social platforms. However, remember that all of the people watching you may not necessarily be in your target market. They just happen to be scrolling on the internet and have bumped into you at that moment. This is the critical difference between going live and actually hosting a webinar. Because when you host a webinar, people are making a decision as to whether they want to sign up or not, which means all the people who have ended up in front of you at a webinar are in fact what we consider to be warm leads. They are people who have raised their hand actively saying, yes, I'm interested in hearing this content from this person. So this is great from a business perspective because you are in front of exactly your warm target audience at that point. So let's think about some of the technology that you need to have ready in order to do this. Now, the reason that you have to have an email marketing system ready is because you need to have something available so that people can sign up, and then for you to actually access those email addresses so that you can keep in touch with them. So of course, I recommend one of the more simpler softwares that are also free to get started with, for example, ConvertKit. ConvertKit allows you to add up to 1,000 leads for free. You can build a very simple page, which is what we call an opt-in page or a landing page. You can just design it the way that you want, put your own picture on it, put the time and date of your webinar and the topic, give them a couple reasons why they would want to sign up, and then you have your opt-in page completed. When people bump into this page, it is as simple as entering their name and their email address, and then they will be considered registered for your webinar. Nothing could be easier than this. Usually webinars are free, but of course you're also welcome to host a paid webinar or a paid workshop or a paid masterclass. Now, once somebody signs up for this, the whole point of having the email marketing system is that you can go behind the scenes and access the email addresses of all of these people. Now, why would you want to do this? Now, there's two main reasons. One is because they've signed up for your webinar, so now you need to email them to give them the next steps. This is the perfect opportunity for you to send them an email saying, welcome, I'm so glad that you've signed up for this webinar. It's going to be great. These are the things that you can expect to learn about that day. Make sure that you mark the time and the date in your calendar so you don't forget. They would really appreciate receiving that type of a welcome email from you. Next, you can send them another several reminders just before the webinar starts. Usually most people forget on the day of a webinar, even if they've entered it in their calendar. This happens to me all the time. So you have an opportunity to send these folks an email the same morning of your webinar, and then again an hour or 30 minutes before it starts. You might feel like this is overkill and why in the world would anybody want all of these reminders? But the reality is people forget, people get busy, people get caught up in their day-to-day things, and then they forget that your webinar, which they're actually interested in hearing, is starting in 25 minutes. So when you send them these reminders, the byproduct of that is that you will have a higher attendance rate at your webinar. What is the point of people signing up for your webinar if they never remember to come to it? So the point of sending all of this is so that they can actually show up live and connect with you live there. The second reason that we want to download the email addresses from the software is so that we can start regularly sending emails to these people. At least once a week or whatever is your schedule, send out an email to this email list that you are growing and building. As I've said a million times before, we do not own any of the social platforms that we are busy being active on. They are owned by other people. The only thing that you actually own is your email list. These people have actively raised their hand saying, yes, I'm interested in this content. So now that you have their email addresses, you can continue to keep in touch with them, nurture the relationship, and show them the other things that you offer in your business. Now, in terms of the web hosting software, of course, you could keep it very simple and even do your webinar on YouTube live. That involves a little bit of behind the scenes back-end tech because what you're doing is you are scheduling that live on YouTube, accessing and generating a unique link for that, and then sending that link out to your email list. Otherwise, if you simply just go live on YouTube, everyone in the world can see that, and that's not what you want. On the other hand, if you want to use other platforms, you can invest in something like Webinar Jam or Crowdcast or Demio. Those are platforms that are geared towards people who want to do regular webinars, and they allow all sorts of features and interactivity in it. I definitely recommend that you go online, check the tutorials, and see if one of them might be suitable for you. If you want to keep it even simpler than that, then it is the most common thing in the world right now to host a webinar using Zoom or Google Meet. So we've all been on Zoom by now through this entire pandemic, so we know how this works. The one real advantage of this is that many people nowadays are familiar with getting on Zoom and accessing Zoom. So it's not a platform that your webinar guests have to get used to once they access it. It's easy for you to set up as the host, it's easy to get that link, and then you just have to send that Zoom link out to your email list and let them know this is where you log in at the time. Now, if you are using any of these platforms, a couple things to keep in mind is that you will have to make sure that people are muted when they join. It's your choice if you ask people to turn on their camera or not. So these are all the general housekeeping rules of hosting a webinar. As the webinar host, you would make that decision in advance about how you want to do that. Remember that in a webinar, there will be an active chat function. So if you are expecting a lot of people to be joining your webinar, then it's always a great idea to enlist the help of an assistant or a friend or someone who can join you on the back end so they can kind of manage and mitigate the chat while you are actually presenting the material. I've hosted webinars in the past where I've tried to manage the chat and the presentation at the same time. And even though it's doable technically, it is a great recipe for getting off track with your material, because people will be making comments and asking questions, and then you'll feel obligated to address those people and talk to them, and in the meantime your slides are sitting there idle on the screen. So try to enlist the help of somebody so that you can just focus on your presentation, and then you can also have a look into the chat regularly just so that you can continue to engage with your audience. Luckily, all of these softwares that we're talking about allow for screen sharing. So as the host, you can make a determination in advance if you will pull up some slides on your screen and then be going through them through your webinar, or if you will avoid slides altogether and just talk straight to the camera and interact with your guests. Within the first 10 minutes of your webinar, consider talking about these things. Introduce yourself so that people know who you are and why you're qualified to talk about this topic. Tell them what is your big idea for this topic so that you can hook them in right away and remind them that they are absolutely in the right place. Thirdly, announce some housekeeping rules so that people are not muting, unmuting, going off camera, on camera, spamming the chat, all of that. And then fourth, give them an expectation or an agenda for the day so that they just know in general what they can expect over the time that they are with you. Now, without having a long and drawn out introduction, make sure that you jump in right away to the actual meat and potatoes of your content. Remember that people have signed up willingly for your webinar and they don't want to see 30 slides of your introduction and life history there. They actually just want to learn the material that you have promised to them. So there are a couple tips and tricks that you can keep in mind as you are going through your presentation material. One is to have a backup plan in case your tech goes down. So something that you can say right away at the beginning of your webinar is, Folks, in case my audio or my video goes off or in case the actual system freezes, please just hang on and I will resend you a new link. Check your emails so that you can join again. That's one thing you can do. Or have somebody ready that can send you a text message on your cell phone and let you know if something is wrong with your tech. I've seen webinar presenters going on and on and on without realizing that nobody could hear them or see them or that their screen was frozen. That's one thing. Secondly, find a way to keep an eye on your chat or understand what is happening there. People might be interrupting with all sorts of different questions, or they might be taking the whole topic off track in some way or spamming the chat. Anything could be happening there. So make a plan in advance about how you're going to address that. Usually at the beginning of your webinar itself, you can remind people that they're welcome to drop their questions into the chat, which you will momentarily pause in between your presentation to answer, or you will have a friend on the side compiling all of those questions so that you can answer it at the end. As the webinar host, that is your choice how you decide to do it, but that expectation should be clear for your audience members. Now, when you are developing your content for the webinar, remember that this is meant to be an entry point for your audience to start a relationship with you. So that means you should give them enough information that they feel that it was a good use of their time. It should be practical and actionable so that when they hang up from the webinar, it actually gives them more things to think about. When you are having your webinar, make sure that you encourage people to maintain the relationship with you. Tell them where are the other places that they can find you all over the internet. Let them know other ways that they could potentially work with you, or remind them that you would like to stay connected. Otherwise, what will happen is that you will walk off into the sunset after your webinar, and then so will your audience after all of that hard work. Now, when you are preparing the material for your actual webinar, remember that people have a finite amount of time that they can actually solidly pay attention to anything. So pace yourself so that you're giving them enough value, enough practical, useful information that they feel like this was a great use of their time, but not overwhelming them and jamming it packed with hundreds and hundreds of slides. People will bounce from this stuff right away, and after about half an hour, their mind will start to wander onto other things. So you want to pique their curiosity enough and assert yourself as an authority in your space, but also give them more things to think about when they actually leave your webinar. Now, the last component of your webinar can be to indicate to your audience how they can continue to work with you. If you start talking about your products and services too early in the webinar, people will be turned off from it because by that point, they haven't been convinced yet of the actual transformation you can give them in their life. After providing all of the content where they are satisfied that they like your teaching style and that you actually know what you are talking about, that is when your audience is prepped and primed to hear more about how they can continue to work with you. So you can tell them about other services you have, other products that you sell, whether the doors are now opening for one of your programs. Let them know that the door is open for them to engage with you and connect with you, and let them know how they can actually find you. I can't tell you the number of times I've attended a webinar where the webinar host just walked off into the sunset after the webinar was over, which meant that the audience at that point had no further information about what they could buy, where they could find this information, or how they could reach out. So don't make that mistake. Make it very, very clear to your audience at that point if you have something available for them that will help them get to the next level and where they can get that information. This is a great time to use the chat feature so that you can drop in some links for a sales page you might have or your website or any of your social platforms. Now, when your webinar is done and dusted and you waved goodbye to everyone and left the meeting, make sure that you download the recording of that right away. Right at the beginning of your webinar is when you should be starting the recording. If you think that you will forget that, that is a great job for your assistant or your friend to do, to make sure that the entire thing is recording because you want to have that available for later. There are a million uses for that kind of a recording, but the main use is that once the webinar is done, you want to send a final thank you email to everyone on the list who signed up saying, "Hope that you enjoyed the webinar today. In case you missed it and you couldn't join us live, here is a link so that you can watch the replay." Guaranteed that many people will watch the replay. People who missed it when it was live because perhaps it was happening at a time zone that wasn't suitable for them, or they were at work or just busy or forgot. And even people who actually joined live and really liked the content and wanted to refresh their memory will even watch the replay. We often see that the replay watch rates are far higher than the actual live rates. This is common, so don't feel worried when you turn on your webinar and you notice that there's only 6 people there because everyone else might actually be watching the replay. Once you send that to them, that is now your opening to continue to connect with people via that email list so that you can continue to tell them about the work that you do and how you can help them. Now, it might sound like a lot of work, but one of the things about a webinar is that it's a complete rinse and repeat process. Once you have your softwares in place and once you have a slide deck that you like to use, you are really just repeating this process over and over and over. Every single webinar is different. Some of them the chat is very engaged, some of them the chat is silent. Sometimes your energy is at full steam, some days you're more tired. So don't judge yourself or put yourself down if one of your webinars does not go the way that you wish, because there are many, many more opportunities to try this. I absolutely recommend that every business owner at some point attempt hosting a live webinar, because you will really thrive from the energy of knowing that everyone that is in front of you that day truly wants to be there and is truly interested in the content. Now, if you're someone who would like to start using more video for your business, but you just haven't built up that confidence yet, nor do you know how to actually get started with simple strategies, make sure that you join my live webinar that I will be hosting soon. Check the link in the description below so that you can sign up and write down the date and add it to your calendar. I'll be talking about all the best tips and tricks that you need to create 3 simple videos that's going to change your business next year. Don't forget to like this video and share it with one of your friends who would love to add video to their business but still not totally sure yet. Make sure that you subscribe so that you never miss any of my future content. And until next time, take care.